Lieutenant Marion Cobra. It is the time when we need you again, to take down the most dangerous criminals on Earth.
Cobra 2 is a fictional action thriller film that serves as a sequel to the cult classic Cobra. The story follows Lieutenant Marion Cobra Cobretti, now older but still ruthless, as he is pulled back into action to stop a new and far more organized criminal syndicate operating across international borders. Unlike the street gangs of the past, this enemy uses technology, political influence, and hired mercenaries to stay untouchable. As Cobra digs deeper, the case becomes personal, forcing him to confront his own past and the cost of his violent methods. Packed with intense gunfights, high-speed chases, and gritty one-liners, Cobra 2 explores themes of justice, redemption, and whether a man like Cobra can ever truly walk away from war. Cobra is a 1986 American action thriller film directed by George P. Cosmatos and written by Sylvester Stallone, who also stars in the lead role. The movie is based on the novel Fair Game by Paula Gosling and features Stallone as Lieutenant Marion Cobra Cobretti, a tough-as-nails Los Angeles cop who is part of the city's elite Zombie Squad, a special unit that handles the most violent criminals with extreme measures. Tasked with stopping a brutal cult of axe-wielding murderers called the New World, Cobra becomes the last line of defense when a young model, Ingrid Knudsen, played by Bridget Nielsen, witnesses one of the murders and becomes the cult's next target. As the cult intensifies its killing spree in the name of cleansing society, Cobra uses unorthodox methods, raw firepower, and his relentless instincts to protect Ingrid and eliminate the killers. The film is known for its gritty atmosphere, stylized violence, 1980s aesthetics, and iconic one-liners like, "You're the disease, and I'm the cure." Despite receiving mixed to negative reviews from critics, who criticized its excessive violence and thin plot, Cobra was a commercial success, grossing over $160 million worldwide against a budget of $25 million. It has since developed a cult following for its intense action sequences, Stallone's brooding performance, and synth-heavy soundtrack. Back in the mid-80s, Stallone was at his peak of box office domination. He'd just come off both Rocky and Rambo sequels in '85, and his follow-up would be one of the great cinematic guilty pleasures of all time. He'd borrow Maverick's aviator glasses and Dirty Harry's macho charm. He'd size down his jeans, chew on a matchstick, and introduce the world to Marion Cobretti. In a movie so 80s, after watching you may have the urge to wear leather gloves all day and sunglasses inside, drop one-liners in your everyday life, and hear a voice in your head telling you to grow out your bangs if you still have hair. That's right, people in this episode of Magically Ridiculous were taking a ride back in time to 1986 and diving into Cobra. Some people would say Cobra is simply ridiculous, with nothing magical about it. To me, Cobra is a quintessential 80s action movie. Surely not the best 80s action movie, but one that perfectly encapsulated why the genre was so much fun during the decade, especially as a kid growing up. Now, before we dive into the laughable silliness of this amazing movie, let's give Cobra its respect. It was a one film on its weekend of release with a $12.7 opening. It would be a one movie for 3 weeks and pull in $160 worldwide on a reported $25 budget. Very good money. But in 1985, Rambo Roman II and Rocky Roman IV both passed the $300 mark. So, Stallone's success the year earlier inadvertently set the bar high in terms of studio expectations for his follow-up movie. Cobra was never a movie critics were going to like. Stallone essentially drapes the structure of Rocky Roman IV over this plot and plugs in the pieces. Cobra feels like it's running at 1.25 speed. It's an 87-minute amusement ride of express storytelling, comical montages, macho banter, and nostalgic action that I loved as a kid and still love to this day. Stallone actually thinks he's cool in this character. He's selling the dialogue, soaking it up, and his blind, relentless self-confidence makes this movie an unintentionally amusing blast. The first 15 minutes of Cobra is probably the most chucklesome stretch of action cinema you'll ever see. It opens with Stallone railing off these statistics as the camera pans out from his Cobra pistol. This rolls right into a short montage introducing the villains who are clanking axes together in an empty swimming pool. It's hilarious. It's like the Village People of axe clankers with construction workers, doctors, law enforcement, guys in suits, and more, all clanking in rhythm of the night slasher who can barely even be seen as the leader of this little cult of morons. And all this, mind you, is while the opening credits are still rolling. Then comes the grocery store shootout, which is really just an obstacle course for Stallone to make his grand entrance. Because this guy with the shotgun really seems to have no plan. We get the classic foot out of the car, a quick pose for the camera and Stallone and off into the market, finding his perfect lighting, drinking beers, taunting his enemy, prancing down the frozen food section where for some reason the doors are opened, and dropping some of the best one-liners in all the history of action cinema one-liners. After a tough day of saving lives at the grocery store, Stallone heads home to his beachfront apartment, rips a guy's shirt exposing his microphone, and heads up for a cold piece of scissor-cut pizza because they needed something even more ridiculous to distract everyone from the fact he's still wearing his leather gloves and glasses inside. From here, this movie gets right into its tracing paper thin plot. Bad guys want to take over the world. They try to attack a potential witness to their actions. She gets away. Stallone's Marion Cobretti from the zombie squad is called in to protect her, which will be difficult because the killers have a person on the inside. Also, how cool would it have been to have gotten a zombie squad movie? Now, admittedly, none of this much to sink your teeth into if you want to think peace. If you want a silly self-serious 80s actioner, then somehow it all manages to flow from short chunks of expositional scene work with abrupt endings like a shooting range right in the middle of the police station, to lengthy montages to move the story, and to no so subtly give Stallone an excuse to flex his new love interest at the time. This entire montage is iconically cheesy, and I love it. Robert Tepper's Angel of the City, Bridget Nielsen and a bunch of robots, with Sledgehammer behind the camera, all while Stallone tracks the logo of the bad guys all over seedy underbelly of Los Angeles. It's a complete mess, and I bless the hearts of those who created it for us to watch. Now on the writing side, this movie frequently reminds you that we're not dealing with high-intelligence stuff here. But despite it all, everything in this movie gels. From the parking garage attack, the movie flows right into the attack on Stallone at his apartment. Then a couple scenes later, the killer strikes at the hospital. And I actually think the hospital attack is a solid scene, and I think Nielsen really sells it. This moves right off into the main car chase of the film, and you have to admit it's a great sequence. It's lengthy and filled with good old-fashioned stunt work. Stallone's ripping all over town in his custom 1950 Mercury, complete with nitro long before Fast and Furious. And despite all the absurdity of this movie, these sequences with the car launching from the parking garage and cars ripping over these overpasses still look awesome today because of the reliance on practical action. Post-attack, Stallone takes the team upstate to a small town. He gets cozy with Nielsen and awaits the arrival of this mysterious cult of killers so he can destroy a motel before hopping into the back of a truck and mowing bad guys down with a machine gun at dawn. This is when Cobra ramps up into overdrive, and the eerie scoring, the high energy, the spectacle-filled gunplay. It's the perfect ultra-excessive closing you want for a movie like this. At this point, Stallone's near the completion of his one-man army mission. He's still dropping one-liners, and he's worked his way through the higher-tier villains. So there's only one thing left. No 80s action romp would be complete without the final showdown, and while I do think the night slasher in this movie was severely underdeveloped given the strong performance from Thompson. The final showdown between Cobretti and the night slasher in this foundry is the epitome of what the genre was all about in the 80s. With his lady watching, Stallone succeeds and hangs the night slasher up on the hook like a sack of laundry. He punches the cop who didn't believe in him and rides off into the sunset on a conveniently leftover motorcycle as a completely out-of-place, upbeat rock song. Closes things out to remind you how magical ridiculous what you just watched really was. It happens to every one of us who has a Netflix account with too much time on their hands. You're just browsing the streaming site, looking for something to watch, and then you come across an old film that you've forgotten. Something that did leave a mark, albeit slightly. You watched it once when you were younger, had a good time, and then promptly went on with your life. The film did come across your mind, but the moment is fleeting. You even remember that movie being a smash hit, but no one seems to talk about it nowadays. But now that you see that it's on Netflix and you do have a couple of hours to kill, you decide to view that film again to see if it was actually any good. Just recently, that film for me is Cobra, the 1986 action flick starring Sylvester Stallone. Now that I've seen Cobra again, I can sorta see why people don't talk about it anymore. Not that it's a bad movie, it's just a dated movie. In Cobra, Stallone plays Cobretti, a hard-nosed cop who is known to bend the law in order to get justice. With a serial killer known as the Night Slasher prowling the streets of Los Angeles, the LAPD brings in Cobretti along with his zombie squad partner González into the case. When a woman unknowingly witnesses one of the killings, Cobretti and González are charged with protecting her as the Night Slasher, and his crew try to kill her before he's identified. As this was released in 1986, this was around the time most of Sylvester Stallone's most prominent characters, Rock Balboa and John Rambo, were still hot stuff. I'm guessing, as this movie was written by Stallone himself, he wanted to mold another iconic character as well. Unfortunately, unlike Rambo and Rocky, I can see why the Cobra character didn't catch on in hindsight. The description I gave of the character is right on the money, and that's kind of the problem. He's kind of one-dimensional in that regard. The only other two traits that I can think of is that his first name is Marion, and he bust González balls for eating unhealthy, even though there's a scene where he eats a frozen slice of pizza for lunch. That itself isn't bad, especially for an action film in the 80s. But when compared to the underdog story of Rocky and the tortured soul of Rambo, this is rather shallow. Still, Stallone does play it to perfection, meaning that his performance is, at the very least, adequate. I guess the same thing can be said for everyone involved, actually. Everyone is basically one-dimensional, but the acting is okay. The douchey by-the-book cop is douchey. The Night Slasher is a brutish serial killer with a very paper-thin motivation. The damsel is always in distress. Strangely enough, the only one I felt had a real personality throughout Cobra's 87-minute runtime is Cobretti's partner, González. Well, not really a personality, but rather he comes off as the one with the most personality, at least. Like a lot of 80s action flicks, Cobra's plot is pretty inconsequential. The story is just an excuse for the director to show us, the viewers, some cool gunfights, fistfights, and car chases. In other words, don't expect to see a tightly woven plot with little Easter eggs hinting at this big jaw-dropping revelation about the human existence. This is not that kind of movie. Also, if you see some really large plot holes you can drive a dump truck throughout, ignore them. This is, again, not that kind of movie. Don't view this movie with today's sensibilities, as the plot holes will just eat you up. Just turn off your brain and just admire the action set pieces. So with that, everything does rely on the action. The big question is, does it deliver on where it matters? Well, yeah, for the most part. They're genuinely fun to watch. Actually, it's rather interesting to see today as all of the action was done with real people and items. Compare it to today's movies, where at least some of the action is done using CGI or a green screen. There is a quality that just can't be duplicated using computer graphics, because all of the people involved in the stunt work were in real danger. It does make it not only look super real, because it is, but a little more breathtaking when you take into account how dangerous some of the stuff was. Unfortunately, while the action set pieces are good, Cobra is missing another important staple of the more memorable action films of the period. That would be one-liners. All throughout the film, I was thinking it needed something, and when I got to the climax, I realized it was the lack of memorable lines. Yes, that seems like a nitpick, but Cobra did need that little kick that one-liners give other 80s action flicks. The weird thing is that, at the start, it seemed like Cobra was going to be one of those movies that would at least try to deliver some quirky quotes that would stick in your head. During the first action scene in the supermarket, Cobretti sprinkles in some one-liners when talking to the hostage taker, so I thought it was going to be that kind of movie. He does get in a couple more throughout the rest of the movie, but not enough. It's kind of disappointing. Maybe my expectations for Cobra were just wrong. I was expecting a rip-roaring 80s action movie, so I did expect some quippy quips from the hero. But I do think is a missing piece as to why I didn't enjoy this movie during my current viewing, and maybe that's why I don't really remember Cobra today. It may sound like I'm bashing on Cobra a lot, and I don't mean to. Like I said, the action scenes are good. But it's just missing that certain quality that made 80s action movies so fun and memorable. So, would I recommend Cobra as something you need to watch? Well, it's kind of hard for me to give it a thumbs up because it doesn't measure up to the more recognized movies of the time. The 80s was the decade when movies like Predator, Commando, The Terminator, The Running Man, Lethal Weapon, Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from New York, Die Hard, RoboCop, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Aliens, Beverly Hills Cop, Bloodsport, Kickboxer, Sudden Impact, Rocky and Rambo, just to name a few. And that's just the ones off the top of my head right now. Heck, I didn't even mention that some of them have become franchises of their own. Maybe go watch Cobra after you've rewatched the ones above. Yeah, that seems fair. Have you seen Cobra recently? What did you think of it? Let me know in the comment section below. Everyone associates the massively successful 1984 film Beverly Hills Cop with Eddie Murphy as lead cop Axel Foley, but how many are aware that the titular role was initially intended for Sylvester Stallone? Hard to imagine, Stallone, who had become one of the hottest stars in Hollywood with the sustained iconic role of Rocky and the birth of Rambo in 1982, First Blood, was indeed originally cast as Axel Cobretti for Beverly Hills Cop. However, after the studio rejected his rewritten script for Beverly Hills Cop, Stallone opted to move on to other projects, going on to co-star alongside Dolly Parton in the 1984 comedy Rhinestone. In 1985, he pivoted back to action, unleashing Rambo, First Blood Part Roman II, and Rocky Roman IV within 6 months. Doubling up on huge box office success in 1985. In the fall of that year, Stallone repurposed his script for Beverly Hills Cop into the film all known as Cobra. Release in theaters on May 23, 1986, Cobra took Stallone's story of Marion Cobretti, better known simply as Cobra, with direction of George P. Cosmatos, who had worked with Stallone for Rambo, First Blood Part Roman II, and also went into to direct 1993 Tombstone, and made it into a high-paced film. Fitting Stallone well, the character of Cobra is a Dirty Harry-inspired character who may have a less-than-by-the-book approach to fighting crime, but one that gets results. Gruff, tough, and hard to keep down, Cobra is a part of the Lap's Zombie Squad, an elite group of police officers who do the jobs no one else can or wants to. A bit of a loner with disregard for standard procedure, Cobra's services are in high demand once a serial killer or killers are running rampant through the city after dark on a killing spree. Soon, assuming the role of protecting a young woman named Ingrid Knudsen, Bridget Nielsen, who was married to Stallone in real life at the time and starred with him in 1985 Rocky Roman IV. It is Cobra against ruthless group of murders who will stop at nothing to get him and her out of the picture. Release in theaters on May 23, 1986, Cobra took Stallone's story of Marion Cobretti, better known simply as Cobra, with direction of George P. Cosmatos, who had worked with Stallone for Rambo, First Blood Part Roman II, and also went into to direct 1993 Tombstone, and made it into a high-paced film. Fitting Stallone well, the character of Cobra is a Dirty Harry-inspired character who may have a less-than-by-the-book approach to fighting crime, but one that gets results. Gruff, tough, and hard to keep down, Cobra is a part of the Lapt's Zombie Squad, an elite group of police officers who do the jobs no one else can or wants to. A bit of a loner with disregard for standard procedure, Cobra's services are in high demand once a serial killer or killers are running rampant through the city after dark on a killing spree. Soon, assuming the role of protecting a young woman named Ingrid Knudsen, Bridget Nielsen, who was married to Stallone in real life at the time and starred with him in 1985 Rocky Roman IV. It is Cobra against ruthless group of murders who will stop at nothing to get him and her out of the picture. The gist of all, Cobra moves along at a steady pace with plenty of high-powered action sequences in tow. Joined by a sense of terror at the hands of what is called Night Slasher, played by Brian Thompson, who went on to a successful career in film and television, you could even argue there is a bit of a horror element to the movie at times, especially when Night Slasher is on the hunt for Ingrid. With all of this in mind, Cobra was generally panned by audiences and critics at the time of release. Although not reaching the same level as the Rambo or Rocky films, Cobra was still no pushover, earning significant box office numbers that ranked it among the top 20 revenue-generating films of 1986. Furthermore, the film had life beyond the big screen, including a platform video game released that same year as well as a solid soundtrack with songs from John Cafferty. Robert Tepper, who wrote / sang the unforgettable No Easy Way Out from Rocky Roman IV, joined by a leading duetted theme between Bill Medley and Gladys Knight. Unfortunately, none of this was enough to push forward the plans for a Cobra Roman II, which was considered but never realized. A fascinating bit of history, what some may consider a lesser-known Stallone film, Cobra, still holds a place in the heart of a niche audience nearly 40 years later. That is why it comes with tremendous excitement to learn that, on July 22, 2025, Arrow Video is releasing Cobra in 4K Ultra HD. The first global release of Cobra, this new limited edition pressing presents the film in a newly restored 4K transfer from the original 35mm negative. A significant step up from the 2004 and 2010 DVD releases, as well as the 2K Blu-ray from 2019, there is noticeable improvement in depth and clarity. Beyond this, there are plenty of cool extras, including interviews with Brian Thompson, Marco Rodriguez, Andrew Robinson, and Art Lafleur, all also part of the 2019 Collector's Edition Blu-ray, as well as new commentaries and a visual essay. Joining these features is a nice reversible sleeve with new and original art, a compelling collector's booklet, and a double-sided fold-out poster. Apart from Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone was the other most popular and bankable action stars of the 80s. He already had great successes with Rocky Roman III, 1982, Rocky Roman IV, 1985, and of course Rambo, First Blood Part Roman II, 1985. Both Rocky and Rambo characters made him a global cinematic icon. And the following year, after he scored two of his among biggest hits of his career, he came up with another character that could potentially launch a lucrative franchise. That character in question was Cobra, aka LT. Marion Cobretti, a tough cop who carries a gun, a customized Colt Gold Cup national match emblazoned with a Cobra art and wears aviator sunglasses. He likes to chew on a matchstick, and yes, he's good with memorable one-liners too. You're the disease and I'm the cure. But before his take, no prisoner's Cobra character was born, it's hard to believe that it was originally meant to be an action role with a comedic side. Even the name of the character wasn't called Cobra, but rather a Pittsburgh cop named Ellie Axel, and the title of the film would be Beverly Drive. If that somehow sounds familiar, that's because it would be later changed to Beverly Hills Cop, the 1984 hit action comedy that catapulted Eddie Murphy into superstardom. Stallone actually came close to playing Murphy's now iconic Axel Foley after a change of name character, but instead of an action comedy role, he wanted a more straightforward action type. Stallone even went as far as altering the script and asking for a bigger budget, but Paramount didn't share the same sentiment. They eventually parted ways, but Stallone refused to give up and decided to take his proposed ideas to mold into a screenplay later known as Cobra. Using Paula Gosling's novel Fair Game, originally published as a running duck, as a source material, the same novel that would later inspire another big screen adaptation in 1995 under the title of Fair Game, starring Cindy Crawford and William Baldwin. Cobra was initially running at over 2 hours long as opposed to a scant 89 minutes. Blame it on Top Gun, which opened a week before Cobra during the month of May in 1986. The Tom Cruise Tony Scott film proved to be a huge hit during the opening weekend, and fearing that Cobra's ultra-violent action vibe and longer runtime might ruin its box office potential, the studio Warner Bros. Ended up trimming the film off to a compact length. Their strategy, which was actually done at the last minute, worked, resulting in a satisfying 3-day opening weekend with a then impressive US $12.6 million during the first 3 days on the May 23-25, 1986 weekend. While it did make money with a worldwide total of US $160 million against a US $25 million budget, Cobra wasn't big enough of a hit compared to the likes of Rambo, First Blood Part Roman II, which grossed a much sizable US $300.4 million. Having recently revisited Cobra, the shorter 89-minute length remained the biggest setback in the film. The film forgoes exposition in favor of a more stripped-down approach, which is basically a one-man battle, Stallone's Cobra, against a murderous group of cult from an underground organization simply known as the New World. Led by the night slasher Brian Thompson, they terrorized the city by murdering the weak, and in this case, it was young and pretty women. One of the potential targets happens to be a model named Ingrid Knudsen, Bridget Nielsen, also Stallone's then real-life wife, who is later placed under protective custody after she spotted one of the killers. Frankly, the story is a tremendous bore, with the antagonist part involving the night slasher and his cult organization being reduced to mere ciphers. But what makes Cobra a guilty pleasure is Stallone himself, who is born to play such a no-nonsense, shoot first ask questions later kind of cop. The film features plenty of action, gunfights, fistfights, and car chases, with the latter involving Cobras souped up. Nitro-boosted 1950 Mercury are among the highlights here. But I still like the opening scene the most, where Cobra sneaks into a supermarket and takes down a crazy gunman, Marco Rodriguez. At one point, Cobra took his time sipping a can of Coors beer, and I liked the way he casually replied to the gunman, "Go ahead." I don't shop here, after the gunman threatened to blow the place up. The opening scene sets the tone so well that the subsequent scenes, save for the thrilling car chase along the streets of Los Angeles, sadly pale in comparison. Although Cobra was directed by Rambo, First Blood Part Roman II George P. Cosmatos, Stallone reportedly served as the actual director in the film. Interestingly enough, Stallone happens to ghost direct Rambo, First Blood Part Roman II as well. Then in 1993, when Cosmatos made Tombstone, the otherwise troubled Western film was partially ghost directed by Kurt Russell, who also led the cast as Wyatt Earp. In 2019, Stallone decided to revisit Cobra by rebooting it as a potential TV series with Robert Rodriguez at the helm, who is no stranger to handling small screen projects following his extensive experience in From Dusk Till Dawn, the series.